it was the story of the summer. Each revelation more gruesome, more sensational than the last. And every magazine had my high school friend's picture on it. I'm here tonight, as Bob said, to talk about my new book. And the reception to this has been everything that I'd hoped it would have been when I started it as a germ of an idea 20 years ago, which is just nuts. And there's some valid reasons why it took so long, and which I'll get into in a minute. Some of you here are probably graphic novel fans, but this book has seemed to have broken out of that graphic novel field where I've been firmly entrenched for the last 25 years to a broader audience. And if you're not used to reading graphic novels, I'd like to offer a little bit of advice as you approach this book. And I realize some of you have read it and some of you haven't. And don't worry, I won't give anything away. You don't read a graphic novel the way you read a printed book. It's closer to how you view a film. You know, in a printed book, a gifted author will spend page after page after page drawing a scene with words, drawing a character with words. And we can all appreciate that. It's a thing of beauty when it's done well. I don't have to do that. I just draw the scene. So what seems on face value to be simple, if you're not familiar with graphic novels, is in fact not simple. You have to look in the background. You have to see what's going on in layers of the drawing. You have to see how the creator pieces the narrative together, how the page flows. This is the opening scene of the book, and let me deconstruct this scene a little for you so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about, and how I think as I compose a page. Believe it or not, it's just not sitting down and drawing. So we start with this long opening shot. It's this helicopter shot, almost like out of a film, over this rolling countryside, this quiet road in Bath, Ohio. We all know where it is. And I always like to introduce a couple themes right from the get-go. And the two that I'm working in right here are, first of all, the setting itself, Bath, with these neat farms and tidy lawns and quiet country roads. I noted the contrast between that and between Dahmer himself. What's going on? This kid is just rotting in this bucolic setting, and I was really struck by that. And the other theme, of course, is isolation. We have this kid walking by himself down the side of the road, and this is a major theme in Jeff's life and a major theme in the book as well. A couple weeks in, I got together with a few of my friends, Mike and Neil, they're characters in the book, and they were part of this small group of band nerds that form my inner circle. And at a certain time during our teenage years, pulled Dahmer into our group, and we formed what was informally called the Dahmer Fan Club. I won't give too much away for those of you who haven't read the book. And we became Dahmer's only friends during high school and junior high. So I got together with these guys, and it just so happens that Neil, at that time, lived about 300 yards from Dahmer's boyhood home, which was then still ringed by yellow police tape as forensic investigators sifted through the dirt in the backyard looking for bone fragments. And we sat there in his house and shared stories about our friend, who at that time we hadn't seen in 13 years since high school graduation. After high school, he just vanished, dropped off the face of the earth. Even though he was still in the area off and on, no one ever saw him, none of us. Now, there was a very valid reason for that. He had already killed. But we didn't know that, of course. So we sat there in his family room sharing stories. And we'd kept in touch, and frequently we'd get together and we'd share stories about old times once in a while and, various freaks and geeks that we knew. Sometimes Dahmer's name would come up, sometimes not. We'd tell a few stories that we liked to tell and laughed at the retelling. But there was a lot of stuff we'd never told before, we'd never shared, just because it didn't seem relevant. It had no point. Now it had a point. Suddenly we had clarity and we realized, my God, that's what he was thinking when he was doing these things. So I had a sketchbook I kept with me, and I pulled it out and just started making some notes and making some sketches. And a little light flickered off in the back of my head, and I thought, wow, this is an incredible story. This is not really a story that people are telling, not the way that I could tell it, from the perspective of a friend, a first-hand account. I should do something with this. That's the genesis of this book. We were friends. I mean, that's the whole point of the book, my friend Dahmer. We were friends from 7th grade until high school graduation. So that's what the book is about. That crucial period during our adolescence where Dahmer steadily, marched inexorably toward the edge of the abyss, and right after graduation killed his first victim and became the Jeffrey Dahmer we all know. That's what the book's about. It's, the perspective of a contemporary. And kids then and kids now always see more than the adults, especially in that very secretive teenage world. And so, yeah, we saw increasingly bizarre behavior. He got darker and darker and darker. And the drinking, which was out of control, as he was, the assumption is self-medicating to try to, quell these voices that were pounding inside his skull. For a while he amused us because he was a funny guy and it was bizarre behavior. But we pulled him into our circle for a while, a small group of band nerds that were my inner circle. And we pulled him into our social net, and he, for a while, became part of our group. And then at a certain point, we pushed him away. And, pretty blunt about that in the book. The adult world certainly failed him across the board, but me and my friends, we also played a role there. I'm not assigning guilt or anything. I think instinctually that was a pretty good instinct to have, so I'm not going to apologize for that. But in the book, there are several scenes that are almost brutal in their callousness about us just kind of shoving him away. And that's the way it happened. The real intriguing thing about the Dahmer story is that he, on the surface, should have been so normal because he came from this very normal little town, good school, nice home, middle-class upbringing, and yet he went so horribly wrong. And I think people are really intrigued by that. That's my only explanation. And, there are some people that are just drawn to the extremes that he went to. I don't really buy into that, and of course my book is not about any of that. It ends when he starts to kill. And in fact, once he starts to kill, I lose interest in him. My book is the story before that story, but people are still drawn to it. Well, a variety of reasons. It wasn't necessarily a priority for a while. It's unlike anything else I've done. I'm mostly a humorist. And I've kept pretty busy. This is my third graphic novel, not my first. I've got a comic strip that I do on a weekly basis that has gone back. I've got a pile of those behind me. So it wasn't really in the foreground. I didn't want to be part of any of the kind of scandal headlines that were revolving around this guy through his capture, trial, and death. And then I couldn't really find anybody who wanted to publish it for about 10 years. So it's been a long, slow process. I always felt that I needed a major publisher behind this book because it's, on the surface, it's kind of a tough sell. It hasn't proven to be that, but I wanted that big promotional machine behind it so I could get people talking about it, and that's what's happened. Well, yeah, sure. At a certain point, it's buried pretty deep. My style really kind of emerged out of those people, to be sure, but then it got shoved through this post-punk filter and emerged on the other side of whatever it is. I don't think that it really looks like anything anymore. I may or may not stink, but I don't draw like anybody else, and I don't really write like anybody else. So that's something I'm proud of. Well, Abrams.com has everything about the book. DerfCity.com has general information on me and the work I'm doing, and I'm all over the place.